A crowbar, the Oval Office. The strongest being ever built, dying on the floor of the most protected room on Earth, and the man swinging the metal has nothing in his blood but a countdown. 3 words while he finishes it. For my Becca. You know how this ends. You watched it. And here is the uncomfortable part. When this man spent 5 seasons warning everyone what was coming, you did what every character on that screen did. You heard a maniac. The whole world heard a maniac. And the maniac was the only person in the story reading the numbers correctly. Not one warning missed. Not one. Say the ugly part first, because it has to be said. His plan was genocide, every soup on the planet, and this case will call it exactly that. The plan gets no defense, but the claim underneath the plan, that manufactured power, plus marketing, plus zero accountability, always ends in bodies. That claim got graded on screen season after season, first episode to last, by the same people who wrote him off. And graded correct, every single time. So hold that image. A crowbar in the Oval Office, and 3 words over a dying god. Because the question was never whether Butcher was right. He was, provably, on camera. The question, the real one, the one the show never let anyone ask out loud, is why being right cost him everything and changed absolutely nothing. Start with what he actually claimed. Because the claim is the part everyone remembers wrong. Not that soups are evil, not some bigotry against people born different because they were not born different, and that is the point. Not even revenge wearing a principle as a costume. The actual claim was a formula. Manufactured power plus professional marketing plus zero accountability equals a guaranteed body count. Vought was always the defendant. Homelander was only the exhibit. The tower was the factory, and the factory never stopped running. Now the man who filed it. His rage came first, long before any cape did. A father who beat him, a little brother named Lenny he could not protect, a way out through the Marines. Then Vought took his wife, covered it up, and handed him a folded flag of lies. One transaction. That was the whole purchase. And after it, the filter that makes ordinary people believe a poster burned off him completely and it never grew back. Here is what that bought him. Everyone else in this story needed 5 seasons of betrayal to see what soups are. Huey needed his girlfriend erased at 100 miles an hour. Annie needed her dream dismantled one assault at a time. A-Train needed to become his own poster and hate it. The public needed a decade of cover-ups, a leaked lab report, and a body on live television. Butcher paid the whole tuition up front, in one payment. They kept paying in installments. The part everyone skips is who the argument was actually about. The audience heard a grudge. The record was a filing. The show sold you its most accurate character inside the packaging of a maniac, and you bought the packaging exactly the way customers buy product lines off a shelf. The creator built Butcher and Homelander as 2 faces of one coin on purpose. The coin was the argument. Now the case against him, and none of it gets softened. Because if this argument only works on a cleaned up Butcher, it does not work at all. So every count gets read at full weight, first episode to last. He did not plan to stop Homelander. He did not plan to dismantle a company. He did not plan anything that small. He planned the extermination of every soupy on Earth, and the list of every soupy on Earth includes Kimiko, includes Annie, includes Ryan, the boy he swore to Becca he would protect. That is not a contingency, that is a genocide with a spreadsheet. And he became the product he was hunting. He shot himself full of temporary compound V, grew a tumor that answered back, and by the end, there were tendrils living in the man who said everything with powers was the same disease. Weigh every count of it yourself. His calls put bodies in the ground. His manipulation of Ryan set up the chain that killed Grace Mallory. He ripped Victoria Newman in half at the exact moment she was walking toward his own side of the table. Then there are the people who disprove his math just by existing. A-Train, the man who murdered Huey's girlfriend on a sidewalk, died in the final season's opening saving Huey's life. Full circle, paid forward. Annie built a family instead of a body count. And Kimiko, the finale's actual victory, ran on her, and it ran on love, on the memory of Frenchie, not on anything Butcher ever carried. His fuel was the wrong fuel. The story's whole closing argument, and it lands. Even his own creator said it plainly. He would have released it, 100%. The only failsafe was a person. That is the entire case, at full strength. The claim was correct. The man was not. Run the scoreboard from the first episode. Because the show did something almost no show does. It graded its own maniac in public season after season and posted the results in its finales. The first grade lands in the 3rd episode. A hijacked passenger jet and Homelander on board. He does not save it. He blinds the controls, weighs the witnesses, and lets 123 people fall into the ocean. Then watch what the company does with the wreckage. Vought turns the crash into a marketing campaign and walks out of it with military contracts. A massacre goes in, a product launch comes out. That is Butcher's entire formula, demonstrated on screen, before most viewers had learned everyone's names. Season 1 closes the ledger's first page. Compound 5. The heroes were never miracles. They were injections, manufactured in infancy, sold as destiny, and the cover-up ran so deep the government helped file it. Season 2 adds an entry the audit almost refuses to believe. The company knowingly platformed a Nazi, not a metaphor. The first successful test subject in the company's history rebranded as a small-town sweetheart, and the marketing department knew her birthday. Season 3 ends with the bill nobody wanted to read. Homelander lasers a protester's head off in front of a cheering crowd, and the crowd chooses him anyway. The last working safeguard in that world was public opinion. It voted for the murderer. Season 4 collects the balance in full. A stolen election, martial law, a deputized Supi army on American streets, and the government itself becomes the newest product line. 7 separate times across those seasons, someone in the room called Butcher paranoid. 7. Run the finales back and keep score yourself. The unpaid bills only ever moved in one direction. Now, go below the scoreboard. This is the floor most breakdowns never reach. Stay for it, because everything above this line was Butcher being right about the past. This is where the story tested whether he was right about the future, and the test had a name. The virus. Track the canister, not the crowbar. Its paper trail is the whole case. The virus was not cooked up in Butcher's basement. It was built in a lab under a university, and the lab was funded by Vought. The company manufactured the disease, then quietly funded a cure for its own product. A grievance dean weaponized it. A politician named Victoria Newman drove off with the only sample, and Butcher took a scientist's leg and his freedom to force the next batch into existence. Then came the finding that decides everything. A strain strong enough to kill Homelander cannot stay in a syringe. It goes airborne, and airborne means every soup alive. The failsafe does not half work, it only overworks. And listen to the debate that followed, because it is the oldest argument in fiction, restitched beat for beat. Not one voice in that lab said the virus would fail. Not one person questioned the math. Every single objection was about what holding it made them. The accuracy disturbed them more than the threat did. But here is what that debate left out. The tower had been running its own failsafe the entire time. Stan Edgar kept Newman as his political leash. Edgar stood in front of Homelander and told him to his face that he was not a god, only bad product, because Edgar held the paperwork to prove it. The institution that called Butcher a monster for building an insurance policy had one in its own vault, fully paid. 3 institutions in this story built a Homelander failsafe. Only one man was called a monster for it. 3. Everyone argued about his hands. No one ever argued with his math. Put 2 speeches on the same table. One belongs to the villain of the entire franchise. One belongs to the man this case defends. Here's the test. Guess which of these 2 men said the next line. You will get it wrong more than once. Somebody in this story says, no law on earth applies to people like him, and says it standing on top of the tower to the whole world. That is not Butcher describing Soupies. That is Homelander describing himself, out loud, in victory. Somebody says the heroes were never protectors, that they are rulers who have simply been waiting, gods entitled to wrath. Not Butcher's warning, Homelander's recruitment speech. Somebody says, the public will not resist power, that they will kneel to it, cheer for it. Butcher argued that for years. Homelander proved it in one afternoon with a laser and a crowd that applauded the body. Line them up and the pattern stops hiding. The fandom heard a villain gloating. The record heard a co-signature. Because in one narrow, uncomfortable sense, Homelander is the most honest character in this show about what soups actually are. He and Butcher hold the same diagnosis of the same world. They only file it differently. Homelander lists unaccountable power as a feature. Butcher lists it as a fatal defect. 2 signatures, 1 document. Which leaves the part nobody wants on the record, the witnesses. Not what the people around Butcher said about his methods, what they did after saying it, because condemning him was free and every one of them eventually paid in his currency. Huey condemned the violence, then pressed the detonator on Translucent himself. First season, first kill. The kid from the settlement office, holding the button. Annie condemned the whole scorched earth approach and tried reform from inside the tower. Then she live-streamed the truth, quit on camera, and years later, threw the Deep to his death with her own hands. Mother's Milk was the team's rulebook, the man who kept the line. He gave the order to test the virus. Mallory built the entire off-book operation before Butcher ever walked into it. The method predates the man. Butcher did not corrupt this team. The team was founded on his logic, then hired him to carry it. And Maeve, the hero closest to the throne, learned that only one leash ever held Homelander for a full season. Blackmail, not the law, not the company. Leverage, 5. Count them yourself because that number is not an estimate, and it is not rounded. 5 people who called his methods monstrous with full sincerity, then reached for those exact methods the moment the stakes were their own. The claim was correct, the man was not, and the people who knew both of those things best were the ones holding his tools. But the first name on that ledger, the settlement kid, still has one payment left to make. Go to the sprinkler room. You have been here before. You know what happens in it. This time, watch what it means. Homelander is already dead. The crowbar has already come down in the Oval Office, and the one purpose Billy Butcher carried through every season of his life is complete, and nothing in him settles, nothing goes quiet. The virus is still in his hands, and his hands are still moving toward the sprinkler system because somewhere along the way the target stopped being one monster and became everyone like him. Kimiko, who fought beside him. Annie, who was carrying a child. The boy he promised Becca he would protect. The mission ate the man and kept eating, and the tumor in his skull kept whispering that the job was not finished. Then the first name on the ledger steps into the room. The settlement kid. The one whose girlfriend is Soup erased on a sidewalk. The one Butcher recruited with a smile and a lie. The one who pressed the detonator in Season 1 and started paying into this account before he understood the currency. Huey stands between Butcher and the trigger. No powers, no armor. Just the one argument Butcher never built a defense against. And Butcher hesitates. Not because of the plan, because of the face. In it, he sees Lenny, the little brother he could not save from their father, the boy who, that piece of him never healed, and it is the piece looking back at him now. And the shot comes anyway. Butcher goes down, and Huey holds him while it ends, the same way Butcher held Becca while she ended. They bury him next to her. Watch his hands, not the gun. It looked like a betrayal. It was the only mercy anyone ever showed him. The failsafe against Billy Butcher was never a Soup, never a company, never a government. It was the one person who loved him. The thing he spent 5 seasons calling a weakness. That is what the room was actually about. Now, read what happened the same week they buried him. The same week Billy Butcher went into the ground beside Becca, Stan Edgar walked back into the tower as interim chief executive. And the final image this series chose to leave you with was not a funeral, not a family, not a sunrise. It was the company preparing its next manufactured soup. That was Butcher's oldest claim, staged as the last frame of the show. Kill one, and the company prints another. He said it for 5 seasons. The ending filmed it. And notice what the ending would not do. 5 seasons of evidence, graded correct on screen, and not one character ever says out loud that he was right. The story punishes him for being right and calls it amoral. Count what the bill came to. His wife, his brother's ghost, the kid who loved him, forced to pull the trigger, paid in full, and acknowledged never. Everyone argued about his hands. No one ever argued with his math. So, go back to where this started. A crowbar in the Oval Office, and 3 words over a dying god. The world called the man holding the medal a maniac for 5 straight seasons. But the company that built the god is already building the next one, and every person who called the warning madness ended up living inside it. So answer the question the whole series leaves sitting on that carpet. If the factory never stopped running, who exactly was the maniac? Not the man with the crowbar. Run the series back with the scoreboard open.